the 30th of June, 1941. Lviv is in the grip of chaos as German forces occupy the city. Signs of Soviet brutality are everywhere. In prisons, they find piles of bodies killed by the Soviet secret police, the NKVD. A wave of hatred sweeps through the streets, and ordinary citizens, fueled by rumor and fear, turn violent and search for a scapegoat. Soon they find them. Ukrainian nationalist militias and local collaborators hunt Jews in neighborhoods and homes. Men, women, and children are beaten, humiliated, and murdered. Women are stripped of their clothes and paraded before onlookers. Entire families vanish into mass graves. Urban streets echo with shouts and gunfire as members of the Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi mobile death squads, join in the slaughter. Over the next days, 2 major pogroms erupt, claiming thousands of Jewish lives and leaving horror and devastation in their wake. One of the main perpetrators of these atrocities is a deputy prime minister of the self-proclaimed Ukrainian government. His name is Lev Rebet. Lev Mikhailovich Rebet was born on the 3rd of March 1912 in the Ukrainian town of Stryi, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His family belonged to the Ukrainian middle class. His father, Mikhailo Rebet, was a postal official, and his mother, Ekaterina Nedokisi, was a stay-at-home mom. To this day, there is an ongoing discussion about Lev Rebet's background. Different sources mention his Jewish or Greek Catholic origin. Despite this discussion, it is evident that from an early age, he grew up in an atmosphere filled with ideas about Ukrainian identity and the national struggle for independence. Lev showed a talent for learning and a strong sense of purpose. When he was still a boy, the region experienced political chaos as the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed at the end of the First World War in 1918, and new borders were drawn in the region. Rebet's hometown became part of the restored Polish Republic. These major political events shaped his worldview. He attended school in Stryi, where he became active in student groups and slowly also became involved in politics, writing articles, and joining discussions about the future of Ukraine. When he was just 15 years old, he became a member of the Ukrainian military organization. After the establishment of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, the OUN, in 1929, he joined its ranks, and a year later he headed its leadership in the Stryi district. At that time, he was only 18 years old. Later, he decided to study law at Lviv University. The OUN sought to create an independent Ukrainian state and saw the newly restored Poland as an occupier. Rebet gradually rose through the ranks of the Ukrainian nationalist movement, proving himself as a skilled organizer and committed Ukrainian nationalist. In the 1930s, he worked for the OUN's propaganda section. He contributed to newspapers and leaflets that spread nationalist ideas among young Ukrainians and became one of the key writers and thinkers in the OUN. Rebet was so involved in the OUN movement that he even found his wife, Daria, among its ranks. The couple had 2 children together, a son, Andriy, and a daughter, Oksana. Rebet's activity did not go unnoticed by the Polish authorities. They saw the OUN as a threat to the Polish state and tried to suppress it. Rebet was arrested more than once by Polish authorities for his political activities, and he was also arrested in connection with one of the most famous OUN terrorist attacks in pre-war Poland, the assassination of Polish Interior Minister Bronisław Pieracki, which took place on the 15th of June, 1934. Rebet was arrested by the Polish police, along with Stepan Bandera and other OUN leading figures. However, Rebet was released due to lack of evidence. What is interesting is that his arrests did not affect his studies at the university, and he graduated from the law faculty of Lviv University in 1938. In this case, it is evident that the suppression by the Polish state against Ukrainian nationalists was not as harsh as that of the Soviets after the Second World War. Despite his punishments and time spent in prison, Rebet continued to work for the nationalist cause. On the 1st of September 1939, when the Second World War broke out, the situation changed rapidly for Ukrainian nationalists. After the partition of Poland between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, Rebet left for Kraków, which was in the German zone. There, he continued working as a leading member of the OUN, and he also gathered intelligence information for the nationalists. In 1940, the struggle for power and different attitudes led to the split of the OUN into two factions: the OUN-M, led by Andriy Melnik, and the OUN-B, loyal to Stepan Bandera. Rebet decided to join Bandera. Both sections of the OUN were steadily preparing for their battle against Soviet Union, which since 1939 also occupied the territory of today's Western Ukraine that they considered their homeland. Their chance came when Nazi Germany attacked the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June, 1941. Many Ukrainian nationalists hoped that war between Germany and the Soviet Union would create an opportunity to establish an independent Ukraine. Rebet was not only hoping, but actively working on the declaration of the Ukrainian independence. In June 1941, when German troops entered Lviv, OUN leaders declared the creation of the Ukrainian state. However, the declaration of Ukrainian independence was overshadowed by the widespread persecution and murder of thousands of Jews in Lviv in the summer of 1941. This crime involved not only the native population and members of the German mobile death squads, the Einsatzgruppen, but also OUN units, which, in reality, were the main force that started the wave of violence. The pretext which triggered a full-blown pogrom that began on the 1st of July 1941 was the discovery of hundreds of corpses in the Lviv prisons, of whom the majority were Ukrainians. They were murdered by the Soviet NKVD, and the OUN exploited the discovery to incite hatred, falsely accusing Jews of collaborating with the Soviets in the executions. Using this as justification, Jews were dragged from their homes and subjected to various forms of degradation. Many were forced to clean streets on their hands and knees or perform humiliating rituals designed to associate them with communism, further reinforcing the propaganda that Jews were complicit in Bolshevik atrocities. Jewish women faced particularly horrific treatment, including being stripped naked, beaten, abused, and raped. Many of them were chased naked and beaten with wooden clubs, not only by local men, but also underage boys. The Jews were also assaulted with axes and knives. Considering his high position in the organization, Lev Rebet is held responsible for the crimes of the OUN in Lviv in June and July 1941, as from the 30th of June to the 12th of July 1941, Rebet served as Deputy Prime Minister in Yaroslav Stetsko's short-lived Ukrainian government. It was short-lived because the Germans were not willing to tolerate Ukrainian independence. Within weeks, the Gestapo began arresting Ukrainian nationalist leaders who refused to revoke the Declaration of Independence. For a few days, Rebet, officially in the office of the Deputy Prime Minister, became the acting head of the Ukrainian government. But only for a short time, because he was also arrested by the Germans. Since September 1941 until October 1944, Rebet was detained in the Auschwitz concentration camp. When he was finally released in 1944, he resumed political activity. But the Ukrainian nationalist movement had already suffered heavy losses, and many things had changed significantly while he was detained in Auschwitz. The Red Army was advancing, and any hope of a German-supported Ukrainian state was gone. As the war ended, Rebet did not return to Soviet-controlled Ukraine, where he would have faced certain arrest and probably execution. Instead, he settled in the American occupation zone of Germany. He began a new phase of his life as an émigré politician and writer in Munich, one of the centers of Ukrainian exile after the Second World War. As with many other Banderites, Rebet did not give up and continued to work for the cause of Ukrainian independence. In Munich, he contributed to various journals, newspapers, and publications, where he also analyzed Soviet policy and the fate of Eastern Europe after the end of the Second World War. Rebet specialized in political theory and law, and he published several works that examined the nature of totalitarian regimes. In his writings, he argued that Ukraine's struggle was part of a larger fight for freedom against both Nazi and Soviet tyranny. Despite living in exile, he remained an influential figure among Ukrainian intellectual circles and belonged to the more moderate wing of the OUN members living abroad. In 1948, the Bandera faction of the OUN experienced a split again when Lev Rebet and a number of other leaders opposed the authoritarian ideas personified by Stepan Bandera. In 1953, an attempt at reconciliation was made, but in 1954, the split became final. Rebet also supported efforts to bring international attention to Soviet repression against Ukrainian culture and language. He wrote about the deportations of Ukrainians, the destruction of Ukrainian culture, and the suppression of the church in the Soviet Union. His publications reached Ukrainian communities abroad and helped keep the spirit of national identity alive. But even in exile, Rebet was not safe. The Soviet secret services considered him a dangerous enemy, as he was one of the leaders of the Ukrainian movement abroad, and one of the few brave enough to stand against radicals in the Ukrainian movement. Therefore, from the Soviet point of view, he was too dangerous. In Moscow, the KGB, Soviet Secret Service, developed a plan to eliminate prominent nationalist leaders living in the West. The plan involved using secret agents to assassinate targets without leaving obvious traces. One target was also Lev Rebet. On the 12th of October 1957, Rebet went to his office in Munich as usual. That morning, he was going to meet with colleagues to prepare articles. However, Bohdan Stashynsky, a man sent by the KGB to execute the former deputy prime minister, changed Rebet's plans. Stashynsky was a Soviet agent who had been trained to carry out secret killings. He approached Rebet on the street on his way to work and shot him in the face with a special gas gun that fired a cyanide capsule. The 45-year-old Rebet died within minutes. At first, it looked like he had died of natural causes, probably as a heart attack. The KGB had designed the weapon with the goal of avoiding suspicion. For several years, no one knew that Rebet had been murdered. It was only in 1961 that the truth came out, when Stashynsky defected to West Germany and confessed his crimes. He admitted that he had also killed Stepan Bandera, the OUN leader, using the same method. Lev Rebet left behind not only political writings, but also personal memories of a life shaped by political struggle. He was a man who believed that ideas could outlast oppression. In the prisons of interwar Poland, in the concentration camp of Nazi Germany, and in the offices of exile, he continued to write and organize. It was despite the fact that his ideas have often been overshadowed and tarnished by the crimes that have been committed in the name of nationalism and the struggle for an independent state. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.